Somehow this is my last semester hosting Sports Talk Philadelphia, so yes, in the fall there will be a new host. However, we're not going to worry about that right now because there is a lot of news that we have to get you caught up on that happened since we've been away over break, which we will do on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I am your host, Aidan, and I'm joined by a full panel this week. Starting on my left is co-producer Shane Nolan. Shane, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Feels good to be back.
And then we've got Riley Kowchuk. Riley, how are you?
I'm also doing great.
And at the very end, replacing Mike Holden, is Braden Knapp. Braden, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into it, starting with the Eagles' disappointing end to their season. They started out 10-1, then lost 6 of their last 7, which included a playoff loss to the Buccaneers. Jalen Hurts had a decent game, 25 of 35, 250 yards, 1 touchdown, was sacked 3 times. DeAndre Swift had 10 carries for 34 yards. And Devontae Smith had the best game out of any Eagle, 8 receptions for 148 yards. So, Braden, I'm going to start with you. What was your takeaways from this playoff loss and really the end of the season?
At least my biggest takeaway from the end of the season is that we got a lot to change and we got a lot to fix. I mean, on paper, our roster is one of the best in the NFL, but we played like one of the worst in the NFL our last few games. So especially going in this offseason, I feel like we got a lot of things to change.
Yeah, Riley, when you look at the offense, no A.J. Brown in this game. A couple other guys were beat up at the end. You had an injury with Hurts. Devonta Smith looked like a number one in this game and sort of showed why he will be expecting a really big pay raise in the next couple of seasons.
No, definitely. I have a lot of respect for Smith, actually, especially these last couple games where the Eagles just have been lacking on what was their grind. I'm not speaking just for myself either. A lot of fans could actually agree that when you watch that game, you could watch the other players play normal. He played that he wanted to win. He wanted to win that game, and that's how he played.
Yeah, there was definitely some moments in that game where it felt like the team had given up. And there was a couple other points throughout the season where it just felt like that the team was lost. And I think a lot of fans saw that. I think there was a certain point where the coaches even said that there was a lot going on that they couldn't fix and really couldn't figure out what was happening. So again, very disappointing end to the season from the beginning part. And one of the biggest issues was on defense. The Eagles could not come up with a stop against Tampa Bay's offense. Baker Mayfield, 22 of 36, 337 yards, which made him the second quarterback in Buccaneers history to have a playoff game with over 300 passing yards. With Tom Brady was the other one. 3 passing touchdowns. The Bucs offense combined for 119 rushing yards. And Sean Desai was fired over the weekend. He was the Eagles' defensive coordinator for 1 season. Riley, when you look at the way that Baker played in this game, it was pretty evident that most people weren't going to be happy if Sean Desai stuck around for another season.
There was times when I was watching Mayfield and I didn't know if he played for the Bucs or the Eagles because of how many times our ball ended up back on the Buccaneers side. So hopefully with Sean Desai, with him gone, he's not the only one that'll be fired, and new, better coordinators will be brought in, hopefully.
Yeah, it is important to point out that in the playoff game, Matt Patricia was actually the active defensive coordinator. Sean Desai had been demoted in the middle of December, and the defense actually statistically got worse when Patricia was brought in. So Patricia said that he's actively looking for other jobs as well. So Braden, it is pretty evident that the Eagles are going to hire someone for defense coordinator outside of the organization at the moment.
Yeah, it's looking like that, and I'm glad they're doing that. As of right now, reports are saying could be Mike Vrabel coming back, or not Mike Vrabel. Vic Fangio, from the Dolphins. He just got released, which is an interesting move for the Dolphins because they should keep him around. But he wants to come back, apparently, per Adam Schefter. So, yeah, hopefully Fangio comes in. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so there is a lot of people that are trying to get this job. Fangio is the leading candidate probably because Eagles tried to hire him last year, and it was a little bit too late because he already made a commitment with the Dolphins. But Riley, when you hear that Fangio wants to come back, it sort of sounds like that had this job been open last year before Gannon was still here and then left, it sounds like he would have been the defense coordinator, and the whole season could have been different had that happened.
Yeah, that is true, but it's also, it like throws people off because the first 10 games, they looked great. Everyone had so much hope. Then all of a sudden it started falling down. You can definitely blame the defensive coordinator because that's definitely a big like bad on their part, but there's also some more like underlying like coaching that still needs to go beyond that. So even if we had him or not, I feel like outcomes could have been similar, hopefully better, but.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see how that all shakes down. And quickly before we move on from this segment, the Eagles are also going to be looking for a new offense coordinator with Brian Johnson saying that he's going to be looking for other jobs, possibly a head coaching job. Right now, he's still the offensive coordinator. The Eagles haven't moved on from him. But Cliff Kingsbury could be possibly available. Braden, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. It's kind of interesting with Cliff Kingsbury. I have nothing against him, but obviously, he has a great resume, especially coaching for Arizona and then USC. I have a little tough time trusting like coaches coming from college to the NFL because it is football, but it's completely different. So I don't know. But I mean, anything over Brian Johnson, honestly. So I would give it a try.
Yeah, it is important to point out that Kingsbury did have a job head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, which had a couple good seasons, but really was a disappointing part of his resume. Was also the coach of Patrick Mahomes in college. And Patrick Mahomes is actually going to be playing in the playoffs coming up. He has an AFC Championship game matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Lions of 49ers are also going to be playing the NFC Championship. So, Riley, when you see this, 4 great teams, 4 great quarterbacks, it's going to be a really fun Sunday slate of games.
Yeah, I'm especially excited for the Ravens versus Chiefs because we do have Mahomes and Kelsey, and then we also have Lamar Jackson. So that matchup will definitely be interesting. For the Lions and the 49ers, that one just like is a little more questionable. They're both good teams, but I feel like San Francisco has this one.
Yeah, the Lions are definitely going to be an underdog going into San Francisco. This is the first time that they've won 2 playoff games since 1991. Braden, when you look at the way the Lions have played, they played with so much passion and motivation, won the NFC North for the first time in franchise history. This is a team where, with San Francisco, yes, they have a lot of talent, but they've got to be feeling pretty nervous about the way that Detroit's been playing.
Oh, I would too. I mean, the Lions are on a roll, and it feels like all of America are kind of rooting for them, even though a lot of people have no problems with the 49ers. It just seems like almost all of America is rooting for the Lions, and they have everyone behind their back, and they're just rolling. I'd be very scared if I was the Niners.
Yeah, another point for this game is that Jared Goff, when he was the quarterback for the Rams, biggest rival was the 49ers. So he's played against Kyle Shanahan. He's played against this defense. That could give the Lions an advantage that might go a little bit under the radar. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in football, so it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens played. We're now going to move into basketball and the 76ers, and with that disappointing as the Eagles ending was, the 76ers on a roll, and especially Joel Embiid, who just scored 70 points in a game over the Spurs, also had 18 rebounds, 5 assists, first player in NBA history ever to have a stat line like that. He now broke the Sixers record for points in a game, broke Wilt's record of 68, 65, and 62 that Wilt had in 3 separate games. When you see the Sixers have now won 6 straight games, Embiid scored over 40 points in 3 of those, and their last loss was 139 to 132 to the Hawks. So Riley, when you see the way the Sixers are playing, they are just unbelievable right now.
When we ended off last semester, the Sixers were rolling, and they are still continuing the rolling. I was actually at the game where Joel scored 70, and nothing was really like talked about at first. I looked up, I saw he had 58 points. I knew he needed to go over 69 to beat his record before, and let alone to go to 70 the same day that Kobe went to that. It was actually really good. It was nice to see that for the Sixers. Everyone around, the crowd was electric. It was just great to be there. And of course, I'm proud for Joel. He's proud of himself, and the whole team definitely has that good support system.
Yeah, when you hear a stat line that's comparable to what Wilt Chamberlain did, it's pretty impressive. And Brady, when you see the way that he played, it started off, like Riley said, you didn't expect it to be a historical game. And then in the fourth quarter, he just kept going and kept scoring. And the rest of the team scored as well because they needed all 133 of those points to beat a very competitive Spurs team, especially the way that Victor Wembanyama played.
I know, yeah. It was actually incredible to watch. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I didn't think he was going to get 70. I don't think anyone thought he was going to get 70. But he just kept rolling, and he just kept saying, "Give me the ball and let me score." And it was honestly amazing to watch.
Yeah, so obviously Joel Embiid right now is the best player on the 76ers, but there is a bunch of guys right now that are having great seasons, even career seasons for some guys, including Tyrese Maxey, who when you look at it, 25.8 points per game, and also close to 7 assists as well. Tobias Harris is averaging close to 18 points per game, which is pretty on par for him, but it's still great to see him having a great season with the way that Maxey and Embiid are playing. And then Kelly Oubre is playing very well as the fourth option, 12.7 points per game, 4.2 rebounds. So a little bit slower than the start that he had this year, but he was off to a great start. So, Riley, when you see those 4 guys and also the way the bench is playing, you got to feel pretty good about the way that the Sixers are playing right now.
Definitely. And I love Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey together. Like, them together is like the perfect NBA duo right now. Kelly, the second he came back, there was like a fire that went off. He's been great ever since his return. And it's Maxey, as young as he is and as successful as he is becoming, is just amazing. And I feel like this team is very well structured.
So Embiid obviously just on a complete tear right now, 21 straight games with over 30 points. But Maxey's also scored 20 points in 11 out of the last 13. So, Braden, when you see those 2 guys playing well together, usually you don't think of a duo both scoring at elite levels. That's what the Sixers have right now. It's been a while since we've seen that.
I know, it's honestly amazing. And honestly, at the beginning of the season, there was some concerns of will Maxey even be good? And now seeing him averaging 25 points, are you kidding me? I didn't expect that, and I know a lot of people did not expect that either. And it just feels great to have 2 people who are all-star worthy being on your team. It's amazing.
Yeah, and Tobias Harris, like I said, unsung hero as well, having a great season. So just so many guys for the Sixers playing well, which is really nice to see. And when you go in the standings, it's definitely paying off. The Sixers are still third, but they're right behind the Celtics and Bucks. The Celtics are off to just a fantastic start, 34-10, and the Bucks 30-13, so they're right there. Sixers, though, right behind them, 29-13. And then you got the Cavs, Knicks, and Heat fighting out for the last 3 spots before the play-in. And Riley, when you see the way the Sixers are playing, especially that the Bucks now fired their first-year head coach and just re-signed Doc Rivers, it's sort of an interesting move, especially coming from a Sixers perspective.
Well, good luck to Giannis's career now. But the Sixers honestly should be higher. I feel like they actually could be higher if Embiid wasn't injured those couple games over around Christmas. The Celtics are the best in the conference, but do they have better players? Don't think so. Their best player is Jason Tatum, who averages 27 points per game, while Maxey, who has less NBA experience, already averages 25.8 points per game. So I do believe that if we didn't have those couple worst games, then we could definitely be higher.
I think it really is important, though, to point out Embiid's injuries because, like Riley said, the Sixers really struggled without him. And there's always been a concern, Brady, when you go into the playoffs with a guy like Joel Embiid, that if he gets hurt, the team really disappears. That's what happened in the playoffs last year. It's what happened the year before. There's got to be some concern that it could happen again.
No, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of concern with that because, unfortunately, with Embiid gone, we're not a team that's contending. Even though I love the Sixers, it just is what it is. So I feel going into it, we have to do everything we can to make sure Embiid is playing and at his best.
Yeah, and there is now a change with MVP where you have to play a certain amount of games. I think Embiid can only miss 8 more before he doesn't get to that MVP level. And Riley, because he won MVP last year, I feel like there might be less pressure on him to win it this year, especially now that he wants to focus on the title.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some competition between people who want Embiid to win, and then there's Luka, too, that a lot want to win. I feel like it's definitely harder for him to get it again. And as he is missing games, this is more doubtful for people who are following along with it. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I'd rather him be injured now than injured later on in the season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that as well. Don't want him missing any playoff games, especially because the Sixers can get that top playoff spot. I think that's another position that people want to see the Sixers at. And then when you go into their games coming up, it is going to be a very tough road trip It starts out with the Pacers, who are very hot. Then you have to play the Nuggets, who are the top team in the West. Trailblazers and Warriors are really struggling this year, but still at that point, you're now into a deep West Coast road trip. So, Braden, when you see what's coming up, again, there is a couple really good teams, a couple really bad teams, but either way, it is definitely going to be a bit sluggish when you're playing 4 games on the West Coast.
Yeah, it will be tough. I mean, the Pacers, they're a great team, but Tyrese Halliburton is out for that game, so I think especially without Halliburton, we should have no problem beating them. But yeah, coming up, I mean, the Nuggets, Denver Nuggets, reigning NBA champions, a very good team, and their last time we played, the Sixers actually beat them, so I think there'll be a little bit of Nuggets trying to beat them. But then Trailblazers, obviously, not very good. Same with the Warriors. I think those two will be tough, especially traveling, but I think we'll have no problem with it.
Yeah, the Warriors one to me is probably the most interesting game. Yes, the Warriors are off to a slow start, but they still got Steph Curry. You still got Clay. They're still going to be fighting for a playoff spot, even though they're 12th right now. So, Riley, they might be playing the Sixers sort of feeling like it's a primetime game. We don't really have a lot to lose, and that could be a really bad position for the Sixers, especially since that is the 4th game in the road trip.
Yeah, I also feel like that same mentality came from when they played the Lakers earlier on in the season, and there was a big point difference. But I know a lot of people were definitely like doubtful on the Sixers because they're going against LeBron, and just a good overall team. So I feel like if they do come into the game with like as they've been playing, then they should have no problem.
Yeah, so this is going to be a 5-game road trip, but there's only 4 in this week before our next episode. So, Braden, what do you think the Sixers are going to be after these first 4 games on the road?
Honestly, I think we'll just continue the way we're going. I think we're still going to stay dominant. I mean, the 6-game win streak we're currently on will most likely will probably be gone after these next 4 games, but I still think we're going to be good, especially at the end of the season.
So, Riley, if there is a game that the Sixers lose in these first 4 games, which one do you think it's most likely to be?
I feel like even though Pacers may not have Halliburton, they also don't have Oubre that day. So I feel like as much as he didn't play before, I feel like that could be impacted on that game.
Yeah, so Sixers going to have to continue that winning, especially on this road trip. We're now going to go into the Flyers, who are playing very, very well, all things considered. However, there has been some controversy since we've been gone. Cutter Gauthier, who was the Flyers' 5th overall pick in last year's draft, asked for a trade, said he did not want to be part of the Flyers, so the Flyers did that trade, trading him to the Anaheim Ducks for Jamie Drysdale and a 2025 second-round pick. Drysdale has played 123 games in 4 seasons in the NHL, and in his first 6 games where the Flyers has 1 goal and 2 assists. He is a defenseman, so that is a position where the Flyers have always struggled, at least in the last couple of years. So it is good to get him. But Shane, what is your overall reactions to the Gauthier trade and everything that happened?
Yeah, first of all, we're going to call him William Gauthier because that's his actual name, not Cutter. He doesn't deserve to be called that anymore. First of all, this trade, this little egotistical, privileged brat, weasel, whatever you want to call him, at the time, 19 years old, saying he didn't want to play for a franchise anymore that drafted him, that at first said he couldn't wait to be a Flyer, he was built to be a Flyer. Clearly you're not if you don't want to play for them. And he said that it was a personal issue between his agent and his family and him. And then he came out and said that with the last regime under Chuck Fletcher, that he didn't like where the team was going. No one did. No one liked that at all last year where they thought the team was going under Chuck Fletcher and stuff like that. So if you would have just came out and said that right away, that would have been completely fine. But you completely ignored the new regime. You completely ignored Keith Jones, Danny Briere, and Dan Helferty, who are trying to build this team back up. And they have done that this year. The Flyers are in second in the Metro Division. They're bringing back kind of the family aspect of the organization. After each game, all 3 of them are down there in the locker room like Ed Snyder was when he was alive, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it was a complete scumbag move by Gauthier. Like, I do not understand how you're drafted by a team, say sort of that you're okay playing with them and not really, and then as the franchise is going in the right direction, say you want to get traded. And I'm glad that he got traded to the Anaheim Ducks, which is a franchise that's going absolutely nowhere. The only team that's somewhat worse than them is the San Jose Sharks, and that's only record-wise. So, yeah, you deserve to go to Anaheim and sort of waste your career away there until you ask for some contract, I guess, from some better team, which may or may not happen. We have no idea. But let's go to Drysdale, who has actually played pretty well. It's good to see another defenseman the Flyers have. What is your takeaway from the overall trade, not just Gauthier's whole situation?
You know, it was a good trade for the Flyers. Drysdale is a right-handed defenseman. It's something that they needed. Now it's kind of a little easier for them at the trade deadline because they're thinking you have Sean Walker in talks, maybe Nick Sealer getting traded at the deadline for some picks, some assets that they need, and now that kind of makes it a little bit easier. This is a trade that Danny Briere pulled off that Chuck Fletcher probably wouldn't have been able to pull off. So it's great that we have Danny Briere now. So I guess making trades isn't as hard as it is if you know how to do your job, Chuck. But yeah, so this was something that they needed, and they got it. And one more thing, I think I said this already, but Gauthier completely just flat out ignored everybody in the Flyers organization, and they tried to talk to him, but they wouldn't, and yeah.
And when you look at the standings, the Flyers are still second place in the Metro, like Shane said. However, it's gotten way closer than it was before. The Flyers won 5 straight, and then since then have lost 3 straight. So it sort of feels like that the Flyers, you can see the growing pains a little bit, but like I said, still second, still pretty confirmed playoff spot, at least at this point. And Shane, when you see like the Rangers are struggling a little bit, the Hurricanes are getting a little bit more on standard, like good footing, but it still isn't very clear that they're going to be competitive. The Flyers right now have a really good shot to get number 1 in the Metro, and I don't think anyone expected that at all, any point this year.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't. Yeah, it's a surprise. They've been 2 points behind the Rangers for quite some time. I mean, now they're 3 points behind them, or 5 points, whatever it was, because they've lost 3 games in a row. And you're kind of going to see that with this team. They're in a rebuild, obviously, but they've played this well for 4 or so months, and to be in second place before the All-Star break, it's a good thing for this team. It obviously builds up personality and stuff for this team, and they do have 2 tough games coming up before the All-Star break against the Red Wings and Bruins. So.
Yeah, the Red Wings game and Bruins as well. Both games, it feels like the Flyers need to win to close out this month on a sort of stronger leg than it has been. Like I said, you win 5 straight. You would have liked to keep that winning streak going. Losing 3 straight isn't always feel good, but again, if you can win at least one of these games close this month, Flyers fans have to be feeling very, very good. We're now going to go into Fast 5 and going back to football with Braden. The Bills and Chiefs played another very, very competitive game in the AFC divisional round. What was your final takeaway from this game?
As you said, it was a very good game, back and forth between each other. I'm very disappointed that the Chiefs did not lose, but it's whatever. And then one thing I will say is all the hate with Tyler Bass. I do really feel really bad for him because he's a very good kicker. Tyler Bass is not a bad kicker. He's a good kicker. And all like the death threats and hate he's receiving is not justified, but it's whatever. But also I think my favorite part of that game was Jason Kelce in the stands, holding the girl up to meet Taylor Swift. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, Jason Kelce definitely stole the show. When in Chiefs games this year, at least, Taylor Swift has been the one to do that. So it was sort of funny to see someone else taking the spotlight away from the Chiefs, who again are back in the AFC conference for the 7th time Patrick Mahomes' career. So obviously, we're going to be watching to see if he can make it back to the Super Bowl. We're now going to go to Shane. When you look at the teams in the NHL, there's a lot of really good ones. Which one do you think is the best?
As of right now, to me, it's the Edmonton Oilers, who are on a 14-game winning streak. They're getting secondary scoring. Their defense has been a lot better since at least November when they fired their coach. Their goaltending is a lot better. Connor McDavid is playing like how he's supposed to be playing, the superstar he is. They have Leon Draisaitl playing well. And yeah, so the Edmonton Oilers. I know you asked me the worst team was at the time, and I said the Edmonton Oilers, but now they're the best team. So
yeah, I watched the Flyers game when McDavid played, and he's just an unbelievable talent. Someone that's really, really fun to watch in the NHL right now. Probably might win MVP, or at least it's going to be competitive enough for it. So it is going to be a very, very fun end to the season, especially for Edmonton fans. We're now going to go from the best team in the NHL to the best team in the NBA. There's a lot of really good ones. Celtics are right up there, obviously. The Bucks, Sixers, all very close in the Eastern Conference. And then the West, you got the Nuggets that are up there, as well as the surprising and very young Timberwolves. So, Riley, who do you think is the best team in the NBA right now?
So per other opinions and stats, Celtics are the best team because of their starting 5. But personally, put aside this team being my favorite team. They've been constantly improving all season. They just keep shocking us, and I want to give props to their new head coach. But this Philadelphia 76ers is ranked number 1 on Fox Sports NBA Power Ranking this week, and it's also ranked number 1 on who I think the best team in the NBA is.
So I know it pained you a lot to say that the Celtics are the best team, didn't it?
A little, but
Yeah, all good. I agree with the Celtics, but the Sixers are right up there. We're now going to go between Braden and Shane. The Dodgers had a couple of really high-profile signings, obviously Ohtani being the biggest one. Shane, I'm going to start with you. What was your final takeaway from the signing?
All the people complaining about the Dodgers and stuff, it's so stupid. They have the money. Ohtani didn't want to go nowhere but the Dodgers, so who else was going to sign him? No, his decision was the Dodgers. And then because they got him, the pitcher Yamamoto, he wanted to play where Ohtani was going to play. So they have the money, and just because your team didn't spend the money, that's their fault. Stop complaining.
Yeah. And I'm not really mad about any of their signings. I'm not really a big Dodgers fan, but I mean, honestly, I still don't think they're going to win. I mean, they have a great roster even now with the 2 signings, but just because they have the best team on paper or a really good team doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with the Braves the last couple of years. They had the best record in the NL, and the Phillies beat them pretty handily. So there's no reason why the Dodgers aren't beatable, but it definitely is going to make it a lot harder for them to lose, at least before the World Series. We're now going to wrap up with college football. After 17 years with Alabama and 6 national championships, Nick Saban officially announced his retirement. And this puts Alabama at a little bit of weird footing, especially with Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. The coach that is coming in for Saban is Kellen DeBoer, who was the coach for Washington, who finished 2nd this year in college football, losing the national championship to Alabama. DeBoer's record was awesome with Washington, 25-3 record. He had the Sugar Bowl win over Texas, and actually his 2 SEC wins while at Washington were both over Texas in different bowl games. Last year was at the Alamo Bowl. This year was obviously the Sugar Bowl and the national championship. I'm interested to see how DeBoer does. With Alabama, you have to recruit against really, really good teams in the SEC. I think Texas is going to look to take away a lot of guys, especially considering they were a playoff team this year. Georgia's not going anywhere with Kirby Smart. They're going to be taking a lot of different recruits as well. And if Harbaugh stays in Michigan, there might be a lot of transfers that go there. So it's going to be very, very different this year in college football with Saban retiring, and we will see a totally different landscape. This wraps up this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check us out on social media at Sports Talk LTV on Instagram and Twitter, now X. When you're going through this year, we're going to definitely be keeping you updated on all the things that are happening in Philadelphia sports. A lot of new signings that the Eagles are going to be looking for at different coaching positions. You're going to be looking, the Sixers obviously trying to make a run for the NBA Finals, the Flyers making a run for the playoffs. So a lot of great things to keep your eye out for. Make sure to keep watching through the end of the spring and make sure to tune in again. Thanks.